This episode of Dispatches from Planet Albany is brought to you with support by New York State United Teachers, which represents more than 600,000 educators and school-related professionals in New York. Dispatches is also supported by the public affairs firm O'Donnell and Associates. For more information, check out o'donnellsolutions.com.
Trump is out there saying, yo, you're protected by the immunity clause. Like, patriots, go out there and do what you have to do. Like, this is crazy. When I'm agreeing with Joe Rogan, this is crazy.
I've also declared war on potholes, so here's the first shot across the bow.
Well, as you know, with Planet Albany, there's always something that makes the planet turn.
And it's this amazing view of D.C., and Eddie Vedder comes out. And he goes, you have a cigarette? And I've never smoked in my life, but if I had, I wish that was the moment.
And this strategy takes us from potholes to knotholes.
I would like to say it was a pleasure, Mr. Kim. But I'm on the road.
I'm David Lombardo, and this is Dispatches from Planet Albany, a podcast about power and politics in New York State government. On today's show, we're going to share a conversation we recorded at the end of last week with Shontell Plummer, head of the New York practice with Tusk Strategies, where she is a partner. In addition to discussing the potential of New York City Mayor Zohran Mamdani and Governor Kathy Hochul on a potential collision course over increasing taxes, we also discussed the possibility of legislative action on New York for All, a conversation that became outdated with the governor's announcement on Friday, so we are cutting that portion of the show. We'll begin the conversation with Shontell filling us in on how the first few weeks of session went.
You follow me on Instagram, don't you?
I do, yeah. But I try to read between the lines on it. You're not necessarily...
That meme of that person, like, falling down the rocks and then being like, hey, you're doing a good job. It was like when your work week is kicking your ass, but you're trying to be motivating and encourage others. Like, I personally think Januaries are just a very long month, period. Everyone's in that like post-holiday haze where calories don't count. You've been drinking, you've been eating, you've been doing California, whatever. You're just doing everything. And then you have to come back to work. For me, like December was like a really I was very chill in December. So coming back to work, January's been hard. It's been very, very hard. From a client perspective, I think the budget, there's only like two major battles. It's the battle of, Governor Hochul versus insurance companies not insurance companies, the trial lawyers.
I was about to say.
It's always a yummy battle for me personally, seeing that, how I feel about the trial lawyers.
How do you feel?
I don't care.
I do have a question for you about the trial lawyers then, since we brought that up. We interviewed the president of the trial lawyers, Andrew Finkelstein, and one of the things that he and I talked about was the influence of the trial lawyers in Albany. And I had talked to him largely offline about this, did you see any decrease, at least on the assembly side of things, from the transition with Shelley Silver to Carl Hastie? Because obviously Shelley Silver was a friend to trial lawyers.
I don't know what you're doing. I don't know where you're going.
But he basically said, people are still picking up our calls in Albany, and that was framing from the assembly. What was your experience on the Senate side in terms of the trial lawyers and their influence, so to speak?
I'm going to go... I wouldn't really give it to you real, but I'm just going to keep it cute for the day.
Sure.
I found the trial lawyers to be entitled. It was like, we're the trial lawyers. We have this problem. It's hard to take seriously the concerns of someone when it's really like rich attorneys getting more money.
But they represent the people. They're fighting for the civil rights of the New Yorkers.
Yeah. Let's check what like their highest paying attorneys make off these trials. Like when the woman spills coffee on herself and she gets
hey,
emotional.
That's an important case actually.
But she got millions and millions of dollars, and people are like, this doesn't make sense.
There is a lot of misconceptions about that McDonald's coffee case, but that's for a separate podcast.
I was given the example, but just like I feel that they, as a staffer, I didn't have the best experience with them.
Do you think
And
they were good with that transition from the Republicans and their majority to the
no,
Democrats? No.
no. But I just want to be clear, a lot of people weren't good with that transition. And it's so funny, like seeing people now after, how many years this has been with the leader? 8 years of being in the majority.
This is the eighth year,
It's
yeah.
it's interesting seeing now how people now kind of have a better, not better understanding, but I think they know what they need to know. But let's be clear, in 2019, they didn't, even though we were in the majority, they did not know what they need to know. They did not give the respect that they should have given the
That's
respect
not how
to.
Dean Skelos did it.
Exactly. You know how many lobbyists I had come up to me, be like, hey, I had one particular meeting. I'm not going to name this person, but they were like, hey, we oppose these bills. And she, because I want her to know I still remember this. And it was me, her, and Eric Katz and Chris Higgins. She put a paper down. And it was all the bills they opposed. And she was like, we oppose these. And she slid it to me. So then I took the paper and slid it back to her. And I said, that's great. We're passing the bills. And then she was like, again, we oppose it. And I said, I guess we're not, like, I don't know what's going on. If you have amendments, you can send them to me, but we are passing. And I think that was the mind frame. I don't know what they had going on with Dean Skelos, Flanagan. And I want to be clear, Flanagan was a lovely man. I loved Majority Leader Flanagan when he was Majority Leader. He had complications. He was human. But like, I don't know what was going on when the Republicans ran. I don't know what I don't know, but I think she thought I was going to be similar to a Beth Garvey or whoever. And it took, I would even say, who else learned that? Rebney. Like Rebney, I remember with the housing package, they were like, oh, doesn't matter. We'll have, like, Governor Cuomo will stop it. You crazy Dems, do whatever you want to do in your housing package. And look at them now, years later, still trying to reverse it. Anyways, we're talking about the budget.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Well, I was thinking about the session as well in the context of a race starting. And I think for staffers, when January comes around, they turn things on like that. It is
Anything's on before January.
right. Well, I mean, they're ready to go. And I look at the lawmakers, and it seems like they have to get acclimated to Albany again. They all say hello to each other, and it seems like there's weeks, if not months, before they're up and running. And do you feel like that's accurate? And if so, how, if at all, does that impact your life?
Well, when you're a legislative staffer, I would say July to September is glorious. I'm going on vacations. I'm sleeping. Most of us gain weight. I'm trying to lose the weight I gained during session. Like, you're focused on yourself. But then it's easier for Albany staffers, especially central staff, to transition to session is because, oh, wait, we have the retreat first week of December. We have to plan for the retreat. What are the things we're talking about? We have to meet with all the lobbyists and interest groups to find out what are the things that they're going to care about next session. They have to, the finance team has to do that thing where they do the tax receipts and stuff like that. And then you just have to anticipate what the governor is going to put in her budget. You have to be able to talk about it at the retreat. There's so much planning. I'm not going to give the Senate stuff, but like there was a lot of planning on like the packages that they did and things like that. Like it wasn't like you woke up one day and you're like, oh, we're going to fight election law or we're going to fight like reproductive health. Like it takes a lot of planning and so I think that's why it's easier for staffers to pivot. But right now, man, it's ghetto. And I have a complaint, and I just want everyone who's listening to hear this. Back in my day when I was head chick in charge at the Senate, I recall making life easier for other people. Like they were like, oh, a lot of times in the off session there's a lot of change within the staffing. And I just want to say, like, what happened to the days when people would at least give us a staffing chart so we can know who's working on these various committees and who's working. Like, I don't need your personal number. I just need a name. A name. A name. You can't get it from the assembly. You can't get it from the Senate. You can't get it from the governor's office. Everybody's gone, different jobs, different things. And I'm just supposed to know this.
Welcome to my world.
And then they get annoyed when you like sit outside their offices trying to find out who work where. Just do the civilized thing and do a staffing chart like they do in other states. You don't have to put the staffers' information, just a staffing chart. I can figure out the emails and get in contact. But like, it's just, let's bring back civility in the legislature. Yeah.
On the communication side, I'm working off a PIO list from the governor's office that is, quote unquote, current as of July 2025, except what they gave me for July 2025 included people who are now reporters again already and wasn't current at the time they handed it over. So, like, yes, I feel your pain about who the heck am I supposed to reach out to?
Bring transparency. Everybody wants to talk about they're so transparent. Well, bring transparency back and let me know who you got on staff. That's been my pet peeve in January because there were a lot of massive shakeups in both the Assembly and the Senate over the course of the past like off break, and it's just like, hello. But anyways,
some challenges need someone who simply won't quit. Modern advocacy brings tenacity, strategy, and unwavering follow-through to every client it serves. Learn more at modernadvocacyllc.com. Well, let's pivot to one of the meatier topics of today, and the relationship between Governor Kathy Hochul and New York City Mayor Zohran Mamdani.
Somebody predicted this in city and state.
I don't read the competition, but a month ago, they were
so rude.
All kumbaya about childcare, and now the day she's launching her re-election campaign, he's screaming that New York City's finances are on fire and we need to tax the wealthy and tax wealthy corporations, something that he needs Albany to do. Are we heading towards an inevitable collision, or can these tensions be papered over at least for this year?
Let me tell you what the people are saying. I'm going to remove myself from this because no matter what I say, your haters are going to be like, oh, don't Andrew Cuomo's clapping. So I didn't watch the press conference yesterday because I guess the mayor did. Was it yesterday that he did the press conference?
By the time people are hearing this, it was a few days ago.
Sorry.
That's okay.
Okay, a few days. So he did a press conference and he said New York City is like, I think, 12 billion in the hole. And, it's not like 12 billion today, but it's like, hey, this year it's 2 billion. Then after that, like there's an increase.
Which is not new for executives who are inheriting an office to say, you guys left me a real bucket of shit here.
Exactly. It was interesting where he was like, we're in the hole because of Andrew Cuomo's he's saying Andrew Cuomo starved New York City. And then he said that Eric Adams wasn't fiscally responsible. Mm-hmm. Eric Adams is saying, "Buck you," because I'm not cursing.
Sure.
I gave you, I gave you $8 billion in reserves, and for those that don't know, like reserves is like extra, like rainy day money that you like. It's like the money you put under your.
Shontell, the audience that listens to this knows what reserves are.
You just don't know. I'm just trying to be like, So then,
if you're listening to this and you don't know what reserves are, you need a new job.
So then I had friends that was like, oh, so these were the thoughts. I had someone say, oh, I heard the mayor was doing this for content creation. Like
everything's content, Shontell. Everything's content.
Everything's content creation. He's doing this for content creation. I had someone saying, well, this is what happens when you run on everything is free. You got to pay the piper to achieve the goals that you need to achieve. Someone said he's trying to apply pressure on the governor for, tax the rich and do the corporate tax. I think that is all good and well. I do think we are heading up for a crash course. And I always like when members like fight with like the leader, the speaker, the governor, my number one question to them is like, how do you think this is going to end? I always ask this question because the governor has the power. So I don't know, maybe this is a way to pressure her to give additional spending to New York City, which doesn't require taxation. I just don't see where this ends for him, where she has publicly said, y'all can kiss my ass. I ain't taxing shit. Like, I thought she was going to do at least a corporate tax in her budget. I was wrong. She said, hey, we got enough money that we don't need to do corporate tax. We don't need PIT. We got a buttload in reserves. And like, I'm doing my job, fall back. She is stubborn. And like, if I'm a governor that's running for my reelection, like Mayor Mamdani already won. He's good for 4 years. She got something on the right and the left, and she says, I'm not doing it. I do not think there's an increase in taxes. So then I'm like, well, what's the end game? And I think the end game is to find a way for her to find more money
Sure.
for New York City without taxing. And maybe it's not taxing this year, but maybe this is a long game of like, you don't get taxes this year, but you get more money for New York City. And then maybe the following year you tax because the hole is going to be so much bigger. I'm just trying to figure out their end game. And I'm just not 100% sure what it is.
I think that makes sense. I think it is the case where we're going to have a revenue forecast where we're going to find hundreds of millions, if not billions of extra dollars to spend, and the governor could theoretically direct some of that to New York City. And I do think that a lot of what Mayor Mamdani is doing is posturing, and I think that a lot of people are smart enough to realize that if you go at each other's throats in 2026, even if you get what you want, you kind of head into a general election bloodied and damaged. And right. I think that the real fight would then be in 2027 as you look at some of the structural concerns that he's raising, the structural concerns that the state has, and I would not be shocked if you have maybe a more receptive governor to the idea of increasing some sort of taxes.
Yeah. So maybe this is starting the pressure campaign for 2020 for the next year's budget. Mm-hmm. Because I just don't see I don't see her doing it this year. I could be wrong. The minute she concedes to the mayor, the Republicans are going to just pounce.
They'll pounce for something regardless, though.
They're going to pounce whatever, but the messaging is going to be like, oh, she's beholden to... I just want to be clear, this is not my messaging. This is going to be the Republican messaging. They're like, oh, this socialist is, basically told her what to do, follow the socialists. It's just going to be like you pick the offensive messaging that they're going to use. And I'm going to be clear, their messaging is going to be offensive, sexist, and most likely racist no matter what. But anyways.
It's also going to say that she is being led around by Zohran Mamdani, regardless of whether she rejects his agenda outright or whether she picks up parts of it.
I think it's harder to connect her. No one's upset at childcare. Mm-hmm. That is his agenda, but everybody needs childcare.
Mm-hmm. Well, before I let you go, I don't know where this situation is going to stand by the time this airs, but in a week, we should know who Governor Hochul has chosen for her LG, and we recently handicapped some of the contenders with your former colleague, Alex El-Masri, but...
I know I called him about something unrelated, and he's like, everybody's killing me over my picks.
So... would you like to weigh in on who you think the governor's going to pick?
I heard a little gossip. I've said this publicly, and I love this person dearly. I hope Assemblymember Cunningham is selected, but I just don't think he will.
I don't think it's him. He hasn't even been vetted by the governor's office.
So he's out. Donovan Richards, Queensboro president.
No, thank you.
I heard a rumor about it being former Speaker Adrian Adams.
That would be out of left field.
It would be out of left field, but I'm going to say something, and please don't be... America has broken my heart one too many times, and I just don't believe that New York, as progressive as we are, can do a woman governor and a woman LG. There is this such rooted sexism, racism, blah, 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 you name it. I think that would be a hard ticket. But if it is a ticket, okay. But I think it's going to be a hard ticket. But I heard her. I think it's going to be Robert Rodriguez.
You don't think his DWI a decade ago is disqualifying
Wow,
it.
you just really putting people's fucking sorry, you just really putting people's business out there in the
Well,
thing.
I'm just thinking about the idea that an LG is, at the very least, supposed to do no harm. And if I'm the governor, why do I want to introduce that backstory? Why do I have to like talk about that at all?
Because I think in today's America, like people make mistakes. If it was like a DWI 2 years ago, it's
Sure.
one thing. It was a DWI what, when he was in his 20s?
2013. So no, he was a lawmaker then.
Okay, maybe. These are my top three.
Sure.
I heard Eric Gonzalez didn't want it, but I think they keep coming back to him. And I just want to say there's been a real void of Hispanic representation or people in positions of power in the state. I wouldn't be surprised at Eric Gonzalez, Robert Rodriguez, and then I'm going to do a dark horse. I'm not going to do the dark horse because if I do a dark horse, people are going to get crazy with my dark horse. So I'm not going to put the dark horse. So who do you think is going to be?
I think the Hispanic representation thing makes sense. And with that idea, I think Robert Rodriguez, because like you said, I question whether Eric Gonzalez can be convinced to take this job. And then if you say we don't need Hispanic representation, if we're not trying to check that box, I say Walter Mosley. Although I did hear recently from
And I
somebody.
heard something. Oh, you probably heard the same thing I heard.
Well, I was going to mention about Robert Rodriguez. Somebody heard them speak at a function where it really felt like he was testing out his LG chops and not necessarily his DASNY spokesperson chops.
I heard something else, not about that, but I'll tell you offline.
Well, on that tease, we've been speaking with Shontell Plummer. She is head of the New York practice and a partner for Tusk Strategies. Shontell, thank you so much for making the time. I really appreciate it.
Thank you. It's been a fucking doozy.